Tonight, the porn star and the president reunited. How Trump's ego might have killed his best defense. You're hired. Celebrity Apprentice VP edition gets a new cast member. The powerful voices fighting for Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. And here it comes. Doctors fear 70 people in Colorado now have bird flu. After the botched response to COVID, who can we trust when this blows up? Welcome to the Ferris Show on television this Thursday night. It seems obvious to say, really, that rewarding bad behavior is a bad idea. It's like giving your kid an ice cream cone after they throw a temper tantrum. If you give the kid the ice cream cone, then they will throw more temper tantrums. Same principle applies to terrorists in the Middle East. When the American president takes the side of Hamas, Hamas will keep doing more bad things. Live pictures right now of the Israel-Gaza border, where Hamas still holds more than 100 hostages underground inside Gaza. 5 of them are also Americans. Their chances of coming home alive went down drastically in the past 24 hours. That is indisputable. Hamas wants to keep the hostages. Israel wants to free them. Joe Biden rewarded Hamas in their bad behavior by placing an arms embargo on Israel. In a war, there are 2 sides, the good guys and the bad guys, Israel and Hamas. A lot of people want you to believe it's more complicated than that. Some will tell you it's about the civilians. That's a cop-out. They have the spines of politicians, which is to say they don't have spines. Wars have 2 and only 2 sides. As George W. Bush said, you are either with us or you are with the terrorists. And yesterday, President Biden, who had been on the side of Israel, sort of, sided with the terrorists by withholding needed weapons from Israel. Hamas enthusiast, noted anti-Semite, and member of Congress Ilhan Omar celebrated. She wrote on Twitter, "This is what young people across the country were protesting for, and finally the needle has moved in a significant way." So someone who is aligned with Hamas is celebrating. Nobody else is celebrating. Nobody else thinks an arms embargo against our closest ally in the Middle East is a good idea. Nobody. Not the Saudis, not the Emiratis, not the Bahrainians, not the Israelis, not most Democrats in Congress, not Republicans in Congress. The only people who are celebrating is Hamas and their friends. And Hamas loves this. They feel emboldened, as do their patrons in Iran. Hamas walked away from ceasefire talks, walked away from the talks that could have freed the hostages. The hostages still sit underground. It's very simple. There's no other way to describe this other than Joe Biden rewarded their bad behavior. So we'll get to the politics of the domestic protests in just a minute. But a lot of Jews consider withholding weapons from Israel as the ultimate betrayal. And we need to be fair. We need to be compassionate. Civilians in Gaza are dying. Gaza is awful right now, and we should care. But giving in to terrorists and their supporters in America will not help the civilians. It will make it worse for them. Hamas is the ones attacking the aid convoys going into Gaza right now, and then crying about the humanitarian disaster. Siding with Hamas will not help Israel. It will not make America safer. It will only embolden Iran. And we've seen what Iran's behavior towards the United States has been over the past few months. The longer Hamas controls Gaza, the worse the suffering for the Gazan civilians, the longer the war, and the worse it will be for the hostages. We know all this to be true, not because I'm saying it. I spent 4 years in the Middle East. I covered it extensively, but not because I'm saying it, not because Republicans in Congress are saying it, not because Donald Trump is saying it. We know what I have said to be true because Vice President Joe Biden told us so, both in 2010 and in 2014.
Progress occurs in the Middle East when everyone knows there's simply no space between the United States and Israel.
The security of Israel and the United States is inextricably tied, and we will never, ever, ever abandon Israel out of our own self-interest.
Yeah. Joe Biden looks and sounds a lot different now. He actually was right back then on all counts. Again, the only thing that has changed for Joe Biden is the domestic politics. With us now, Ambassador David Friedman was ambassador to Israel under President Trump. Good to see you, sir. Thank you. When you heard the news officially yesterday, but it was over the past couple days, we sort of saw it coming. I get being shocked by the change in U.S. policy and the change from what President Biden campaigned on and said was so important for so many years. But were you really that surprised?
You know, I was not that surprised because, as you point out, it was coming. It was coming. I think that Biden had been messaging this in small doses over time. What really shocked me was the fact that he knew he was cutting off Israel aid 2 days ago when he gave this speech on Holocaust Remembrance Day, you know, probably the most somber day on the Jewish calendar. And he's talking about the fact that, you know, there'll never be another Holocaust. There'll never be another October 7th. Never again means never again. And while he's saying this, he already knows, but he's concealing it, but he already knows that he's cutting off Israel's ability to end the Hamas war and to defeat these 4 battalions in southern Gaza. So because that's not just, you know, politics, which I understand, that's a character flaw that I was really stunned by.
You and I have been in Israel. We weren't there together, but we've all been there on Remembrance Day when the sirens all wail and everybody stops no matter where they are. They get out of their cars and they think about what happened to the Jewish people in World War II. And to that extent, there's something different about the Israeli psyche. They respond to blackmail very differently, I think, than almost anybody else. Prime Minister Netanyahu, if we have to stand alone, we will stand alone. I've already said that if we have to, we will fight with our nails. That was his response. You understand Prime Minister Netanyahu. You understand the Israeli psyche. Is this the way, the threatening, the withholding of aid, the public shaming, the way to get what President Biden wants, which is the domestic political win of the end of the war in Gaza?
Yeah, look, what you're alluding to is exactly right. It's the wrong way. It's the wrong way to influence Israel. It makes Israel feel very alone. And when Israel feels alone, they are committed as a matter of their most basic policy that there will never be another Holocaust, and they will defend themselves as best they can with whatever they have. Now, you know, they're not going to need sticks and nails. They still have plenty of weapons. Unfortunately, the weapons they have will not have attached to them the precision guidance kits that would make them, you know, far less lethal to the civilian population of Rafah. So if Biden's goal is to minimize civilian casualties, he's actually depriving Israel of the very equipment that they need to accomplish exactly that.
Right. Now, the ironies here are multi-layered. This program has been extraordinarily, I think critical would be the right word, the fairest word, of the Biden administration's policy towards Israel. We sort of predicted this, and I don't like to say that, going back to October 7th, there would be this split because of the domestic political considerations. But to be fair, there have been other presidents who've withheld arms from Israel. It hasn't gone over very well, but they have been, including Ronald Reagan back during the Lebanon War. Take a listen.
The gentleman wonders, with the installation of Soviet SAM-5s in Syria, is the president prepared to release the American planes scheduled for shipment to Israel?
You must realize that under the law exists now, those weapons must be for defensive purposes. And this is, again, one of the obstacles presented by the stalemate in Lebanon. While those forces are in the position of occupying another country that now has asked them to leave, we are forbidden by law to release those planes.
And there was ways that Ronald Reagan could have released the planes if he wanted to and declared things in different ways. H.W. Bush famously withheld arms also. Bush tells Congress no on aid to Israel. Why is what Joe Biden did any different than what Ronald Reagan, Republican hero, what George H.W. Bush, stalwart conservative and Republican hero, did?
Look, Look, I think in those cases they were, and I'd want to look at it some more, but I think in those cases they were pursuing policies of America's national security interests that they thought were correct. I mean, again, I'd have to go back and look and see, how to best debate those points. But, here I think we're talking about naked politics. I mean, there is no national interest served by Israel not defeating Hamas, none whatsoever. In fact, it's critical to our interests throughout the entire Middle East that America can show that together with Israel, it has the capacity to defeat radical Islamic terrorists. That was the capacity that we demonstrated, in the Trump administration that got us to the Abraham Accords. The fact that America standing with Israel is a bulwark against the common threat in the Middle East to radical Islamic terrorism. Biden's not doing this for any national interest. He's doing this solely because he thinks it will help him get more votes in places like Michigan and Minnesota. And that's a very, very different construct than you put on the screen before.
There was an interesting quote that came out, and we're going to put it on the screen here in a second. You always follow the money. You know a lot about fundraising and politics. Barak Ravid delivered, I thought, a devastating scoop. It was an email that he got a hold of from Hamin Saban, who's a big Democratic donor, to Joe Biden, sent through a couple of aides, which is how this happens. I know you. Let's not forget there are more Jewish voters who care about Israel than Muslim voters who care about Hamas. He said in the email, begging President Biden to reconsider. Are we seeing a realignment of the Jewish vote slowly as it was happening and now very quickly because of this?
I think so. I think that we're seeing exactly that. Anecdotally, I can tell you so many people that I've known over the years, who kind of appreciated Trump's Israel policy but still couldn't get themselves to vote for him, are now calling me up and saying, you know what, he wasn't our guy, but he is now, because things have gotten that bad and anti-Semitism is that much of a concern to that many Jewish people. We may be seeing Democrats coming out for Trump in ways that hasn't happened probably since Reagan in 1984, when he was, he won New York State.
Yeah, I got a phone call actually a couple of hours ago from someone who rabidly dislikes Donald Trump. I won't use the word hate because I don't think it's a fair characterization, but rabidly dislikes him, and he said over and over they would never, ever vote for him, and just called and said, that's it. I'm going to have to because of the decision made yesterday as it relates to Israel. It's amazing how many people for that. It's a single issue. They're single issue voters, and Israel now, for the first time, has become that single issue that can decide things. President Biden has done that. Ambassador, appreciate your perspective as always in your service. The Abraham Accords are something that did a lot of good for the world.
Thank you, Leland. Great to be with you.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador. Yeah. With us now, Joe Trippi, former campaign manager for Howard Dean's presidential campaign, Democratic strategist, senior advisor to the Lincoln Project. Good to see you as always, Joe.
Good to be with you.
Have you been surprised by how violent, virulent, whatever you want to use, strong the response has been to Biden's decision over the past 24 hours?
No, not at all. Look, this is one of those things where you're not going to, there's no politics in this. There's no political gain either way. There are a bunch of people who literally you cannot make happy no matter what you do. I mean, I'm talking about young people concerned about humanitarian, and what they would say is over the top attacks by Israel in Gaza, and the same with people who want to absolutely wipe out Hamas, as does the president. The difference here is.
Joe, no. You cannot say that the president wants to absolutely wipe out Hamas when he's withholding the weapons from Israel that would actually wipe out Hamas.
He's not doing that, Leland. He's saying, look, when Iran attacked Israel. If I remember correctly, weeks ago, there was a president and an administration and a State Department that rallied and got the Saudi Arabia, Jordan, I mean, one of the biggest defensive coalitions on the planet to protect and defend Israel against those missiles and the drones. What he's saying...
First of all, you're conflating two things here. You're all of a sudden conflating the defense... No, yes, you are. You're conflating the defense of Israel with trying to wipe out Hamas, and you're telling me you've still not answered the question. How is President Biden saying he wants to wipe out Hamas when he's keeping weapons from Hamas?
Normally, Leland, you used to let me complete sentences and answer your questions, but if
please answer the question.
Yeah, it's really simple. What the president said and what he's doing is if you intend to go into Rafah and drop 2,000-pound bombs on that in Rafah, they're not going to be we're not going to supply those bombs to you. There's plenty of ways to eradicate Hamas. And not only that, we learned these lessons in Iraq. And we initially made a lot of mistakes when we went into Iraq, and you know that. And we learned in Mosul and other places a better way to do these door-to-door, take out the enemy. And there are better ways. You can support Israel 100% and still have problems with the way Netanyahu is prosecuting that war. That is where I think the president is. He's made that clear now for a while. And you may disagree with it. There may be people. Your last guest, the ambassador, sits there, starts the whole thing saying he did this for political reasons, and then says, but he's getting his butt kicked because he's losing all kinds of votes with Jews. You said the same thing. How the hell? You can't have it both ways. No, I started this whole conversation saying this is not, no one is doing anything there for political reasons. There is no way to turn this into a political win. Somebody is going to be unhappy. Maybe both sides will be unhappy with the president, but it's not because he's trying to get votes. That, I think, is complete BS. And I don't care who you put on to say that. I will still
Joe, I respectfully have let you now talk for 2 minutes uninterrupted. So I understand what your position is. President Biden, we played the sound bites back to back, 2010, 2014. One of his lines, the security of Israel and the United States is inextricably tied, and we will never, ever abandon Israel out of our own self-interest. Progress occurs in the Middle East when everyone knows there is simply no space between the United States and Israel. President Biden wants progress in the Middle East, yet he just created enormous space between himself, between the United States and Israel. Was he wrong then or now?
The United States isn't abandoning Israel. The president isn't abandoning Israel. You can urge Netanyahu to prosecute the war in a different way, and without dropping 2,000-pound bombs that will inevitably increase the number of innocent civilians who will be killed. You can eradicate Hamas without doing that. That is what he's saying. Now, we can all disagree about that, but that's what he's saying. He's not abandoning anybody. It'll never happen. Never.
All right. Well, I understand your point, and I think you speak for a lot of people, and you do. Obviously, that's one of the reasons the president made the decisions he did. Joe, it's good to see you as always. Looking forward to having you in studio sometime. All right.
Yeah, absolutely, Leland. Good to see you.
All right. Good to see you. Hey. Wrote about this a lot this morning in War Notes, warnotes.com to subscribe for free. It's our daily newsletter. It comes out at 4 p.m. every day. Gives you our most important thoughts on the day's news. At Leland Vittert on Instagram and Twitter to continue the conversation. Donald Trump's lawyers, they tried to prove that Stormy Daniels concocted her entire story, how Team Trump perhaps got too cute for their own good. And Americans believe immigration is the #1 problem facing the country. NewsNation is on the southern border tonight. Obviously, we've been there for years. The new reporting you will hear only in Dan Abrams' Border Special, just an hour and 40 minutes away. President Biden will go back on some of his campaign promises and make it easier to deport illegal aliens claiming asylum in America so as to not inflame the far left. The rule is coming from within the Department of Homeland Security, and it's not the big Biden administration border rollout that some of us have been expecting or the administration floated. The White House hopes that by Election Day, more deportations will make the border numbers look better for the campaign. There's a reason for that, because our NewsNation Decision Desk HQ polling found the border as the second biggest issue for voters just after the economy. Tonight, a special edition of Dan Abrams Live is going to tackle every part of the immigration crisis, both at the border and in communities across the country. Dan is with us now. Pretty cool, and I think what's most important about what you're doing is you're showing actually what it's like on the front lines, night after night, day after day.
Right. I mean, look, Leland, you and I on our shows talk a lot about the politics of the border, right? About what ought to be done, what should have been done a long time ago, what still can be done politically. That's not what our focus is going to be tonight. Tonight, the focus is going to be on exactly what's happening down there. What does it feel like? What are the logistics like? What happens when someone lands in a city? Who's there? Where do they go? It's going to be really through the eyes of law enforcement in a large way. We've got sheriffs and police officers from around the country who've been impacted by the border crisis in places that people forget are impacted, which is at this point just about everywhere in the country. And Allie Bradley, our correspondent down there, got a really important interview with a border agent. Now remember, they're not allowed to speak publicly, right? So we had to protect this person's identity, and Allie was able to really get an honest assessment of exactly what's going on. Here's a little bit of it.
No one is coming. No one is coming to protect you. Even at the local law enforcement level, we're seeing them be defunded and overwhelmed to where your life has to be threatened for them to make you a priority. So no one is coming, and you better self-help, self-protect.
You know, Leland, I know, the garbling of the voice sounds almost absurd, right? But the point is that, this is someone who really isn't allowed to speak. So we wanted to protect even the gender of the person speaking, which is why the voice is so distorted. But the information is what's really important. I've never heard firsthand on camera. I mean, look, obviously a number of us have gone down there, spoken with some of the folks there. I'm in contact with law enforcement all the time. But to hear someone speaking out publicly about not just the dangers down there, but the frustrations down there with the bosses as well, is a really unique thing, and we're going to have a lot more of that interview tonight on the show.
Yeah, I think after this, people will have a different understanding of what Border Patrol especially goes through and what a thankless job it has become as they become sort of border processors and spend no time chasing people and actually patrolling the border, but just processing everybody showing up. Tell me, what are you going to focus on when it comes to the rest of America? Because the border crisis, as you've laid out and I've laid out as well, has moved, right, from the border to every town, not just big cities, every town in America.
Right. So there's the move to the big cities, right? That's the part that gets all the attention. Oh, migrants are being bused to this city and that city. Okay, the first impact of that is you start to see the areas around the cities, right? They're moving out of the cities. Cities are getting too full. So you're immediately seeing the area around those cities. But then beyond that, we're going to be talking about a city in Alabama that had, just a tiny percentage of Spanish-speaking residents. And now the schools, for example, more than 60%, in a way that the teachers sometimes can't communicate with the kids who are there, because the fundamental change that's happened there has put them in this position where, they can't even speak the language sometimes of their students. And that's in a remote area of Alabama. So it shows you that this is happening everywhere to some degree. Even people who may not realize that it's directly impacting them, it may be impacting you more than you think.
Yeah, for sure. It's at schools, it's at hospitals, it's at the just infrastructure level in terms of highways and everything else all throughout America. Dan, looking forward to the show tonight. We'll let you go get ready. Congrats ahead of time. This is important.
Thanks, Leland.
Yeah, special edition. Dan Abrams live with the Border Patrol as they patrol in real time. That includes Texas Department of Public Safety, conversations with police departments across the country as the border crisis has come to every city in America, 9 p.m. Eastern, right after Cuomo. Glenn Youngkin turned Virginia's suburbs blue to red, making him the perfect VP candidate for Trump in the eyes of one very important man. Will powerful friends help Youngkin go from the short list to the picked list? Again, I have to start a segment by apologizing to my mother for, in her words, the double ick of talking about what may or may not have happened between a porn star and Donald Trump. None of the activity, mind you, is allegedly criminal, but understandably it is news because of who it involves and the fact that it is now in court. Stormy Daniels took the stand for the second time today in the Donald Trump business records case, and most of the people talking about the case weren't actually in the courtroom to witness it, nor did they see the body language or reaction of Trump's lawyers cross-examining Stormy Daniels, like this exchange that we're going to tell you about. Again, no cameras, so we have to read it to you. Trump attorney Susan Nichols to Stormy Daniels: "You have a lot of experience making phony stories about sex." Daniels: "Wow, that's not how I would put it. The sex in the films is very much real, just like what happened to me in that room. If that story was untrue, I would have written it to be a lot better." One of many moments today. With us now, Jimena Bustillo, NPR politics reporter who was inside the courtroom today. Michael DeSharo, New York City criminal defense lawyer, former prosecutor in Manhattan. Great to have you back. Jimena, start with you. What was going on during this? You've got Stormy Daniels, who's a celebrity in and of herself. She's now being cross-examined. Did the body language between her and Trump change between when sort of she seemed to be on offense with the prosecutor and now on defense with the defense attorneys?
Yeah, I think today she was definitely a little bit more collected and direct in her answers. You might remember that on Tuesday, she even got reprimanded by the judge himself for giving maybe too many details and not answering the questions directly. Today, she was a lot more pointed on what it was that she was responding to. So that was definitely a change in behavior.
All right, so one of the other moments of cross-examination, you acted and had sex in over 200 porn movies, right? And there are naked men and women having sex, including yourself in those movies. But according to you, seeing a man on a bed in a T-shirt and boxers was so upsetting you got lightheaded. This is the attorney talking about how Daniels said that she got lightheaded when she saw Donald Trump. "I came out of the bathroom seeing an older man that I wasn't expecting to be there." And this has gotten a lot of coverage in terms of the cross-examination, how aggressive Trump's attorneys were. The term that has been thrown around by a lot of legal panels of lawyers who weren't there was slut-shaming. Take a listen.
I sat through 2 E. Jean Carroll trials and 2 cross-examinations of E. Jean Carroll, and I have to tell you, I agree with Sue wholeheartedly. This was very much what I'd call a nuts and sluts defense.
There's some slut shaming.
Yeah, and she cannot be shamed, right? I mean, she is in the adult film business, and she's fine with it. And I think you see Donald Trump, I think he was cursing yesterday, and you can see, I think, that it is his motivation to really shame this woman, and it's not working.
Michael, how can you say it's not working when you have no idea what is in the minds of the jurors?
Well, I mean, it's very difficult. You can only speculate. There's a danger when it comes to cross-examination. First, you notice they had a woman cross-examine her. That doesn't mean you get licenses to do something. Just because you're a woman is cross-examining a woman, rules still apply. I'm not sure I would have cross-examined her at all. When you have a witness that you want to cross-examine, Leland, and this is law school 101 stuff, what is it that you want from them? Can they give it to you? Can they hurt you? Because if you start playing this game like this lawyer did with her, she's a porn star. She has sex for money, whatever you want to say. But once you start getting into that gutter, you're not really helping your client. What can she do to help your case? Does she know anything about the finances? No. Does she know anything about accounting? No. Does she know anything about, maybe you could ask her if Donald Trump treated her fairly. Are you going to deny that they had sex? That's pretty much been well established. I don't think, she's a grifter because she was selling T-shirts and she did a tour based on having sex with Trump. But I don't know you get a lot out of her when you cross-examine her.
Yeah, Jimena, when you were in the courtroom listening to all of this, we're 14 days in, and we really haven't gotten to the criminal part of this, which is, did Donald Trump's business at his direction properly account for these payments to Stormy Daniels? Have we gotten to just the point of boredom by some members of the jury and maybe even some reporters yet?
I think at certain points there have definitely been some lows as there have been some highs. The entire point so far has been primarily proving some level of intent. And that is what Tuesday and today were about with examining Stormy Daniels' story. What was it that former President Trump may have wanted to conceal? And that is the point of her testimony, even though it doesn't necessarily relate to the method of him potentially falsifying business records. So that part still needs to be explained. We are also still listening to a lot of testimony about how mail was sent between the Trump Organization and the White House. I think about 3 different custodial witnesses have testified to that. You kind of see the jurors paying attention, taking a lot of notes, but also at the same time, maybe getting a little tired of the little tiny details that come with all of this process.
Michael, the fact that there's no cameras in the courtroom helps who in this?
At this point, it probably helps. This really gets into the politics, which I'm really not sure, but I think it helps the prosecution.
Yeah.
Because you're not, the longer this drags on for trial and his supporters, the worse it looks. And this is a very bad legal case. I'm still waiting. Leland, I'm in Manhattan. I'm going there tomorrow for one of my cases, and I'm still waiting for the crime. I'm still waiting for the felony. No one has ever been able to show it to me, and I've asked everybody. I've put it out on all social media. I would like to know if anybody's ever been prosecuted on these kind of facts. The falsifying business records, I've seen that 100 times, usually with fake license plates. But facts like these have never been prosecuted in the state of New York. And I'd like somebody to prove me wrong, but I'm waiting for the felony.
All right. Well, we'll all wait and see what the next witnesses have to say. I'm so glad to have both of you. A lawyer who doesn't do politics, and B, a reporter who's actually in there and can observe and tell us what they observe. Thank you both. We appreciate it. Watching Donald Trump actually practice politics, he is running for president. And he's treating his vice presidential search a little bit like Celebrity Apprentice. And on the latest episode, Rupert Murdoch, CEO of Fox News and the Wall Street Journal, has joined and suggests that Glenn Youngkin, governor of Virginia, is the man for the job. CNBC reported Murdoch has hinted to several friends who move in Trump's circles that he would be happy with a Trump Republican ticket that included Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. Murdoch tried to support a draft Youngkin campaign last fall. That did not work out too well. So Youngkin now joins Elise Stefanik, J.D. Vance, Tim Scott, Doug Burgum, and others on Celebrity Apprentice VP edition. It's likely Trump won't name his nominee until closer to the RNC in July. And look, there's something about this public vetting that is probably pretty important. Cue Kristi Noem, who admitted to shooting her dog in a gravel pit and bragged about it. Joining us now, former Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, who has been through this before. This is sort of the first public search, right, for a vice president. But just tell us, what's it like, even when it's done privately, to be on the short list and have from April until July the kind of media scrutiny all these folks are getting?
Well, yeah, it's the ultimate Veepskates. And you mentioned it. Kristi Noem was the first one to see just how difficult that could be. Obviously, she blew up her chances with the release of this new book and maybe even permanently kill their political career. But for these others, you're going to see highs and lows. Someone just recently in the last day asked me about Texas Governor Greg Abbott. I said, yeah, when he was down at the border, former President Trump said what a fabulous job he did. He'd be a great candidate for being on the ticket with him. That doesn't mean he's going to pick him. It means Donald Trump likes to try these things out, see what the response is, see what the kind of media scrutiny is at. And then, as he did 8 years ago, he may very well pick someone that none of us, or very few of us, are even talking about right now, and surprise the electorate. So nothing is certain.
Yeah, you think about past VP picks have always been slotted to do something or to provide something that the man at the top of the ticket could not. Kamala Harris solved Biden's old white guy problem. Pence solved Trump's problems with evangelicals. Biden solved Obama's inexperience problem. Does Glenn Youngkin and Rupert Murdoch talking about Glenn Youngkin so much, does that speak to a certain problem that Donald Trump has?
Yeah, I think whether it's Glenn Youngkin, who's done a fabulous job as governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and his popularity is still very high, even after being about 2 years into winning that remarkable campaign. This is a guy who was able to make his own case while still not being distant from President Trump. A rare balance these days where he was able to pick up independent and swing voters in a once considered blue state. He stayed remarkably popular because he's competent, because he gets the job done. It's why I think the best pick, whether it's Glenn Youngkin or a list of other names, for example, Governor Kim Reynolds in Iowa, I think would be another pick. To your question, the reason why people like that would be good on the ticket is competency. It says, hey, this is a guy, you may not always like his tweets or his comments occasionally here or there, but he gets the job done. If he puts someone on who's a proven problem solver, I think that helps make the case as well.
Betting odds right now for the VP, obviously you've had Kristi Noem drop way off. This is if you bet 22 cents on Tim Scott, you make $1. Doug Bergeman's at 15 cents, J.D. Vance 13 cents. It goes down from there for what Trump's pick would be. And just inside baseball, because sometimes it's kind of fun to pull the curtain back. Karl Rove wrote a long piece about picking the vice president in the Wall Street Journal, which is also owned by Rupert Murdoch. And then you get this leak about Murdoch and Youngkin. I've heard through my own reporting that Youngkin's name suddenly is starting to pop up in conversations. What do you make that Rove's column in the Wall Street Journal didn't mention Youngkin's name?
Oh, I think right now it's probably because the initial sentiment is, if anything, the people supporting him are looking ahead to 28 and beyond in hopes that he might be a future top of the ticket candidate because of the remarkable job that he's done. But I think in the end, the key, and you mentioned all those past picks, the key is to do no harm. You know, it used to be about geographical balance. Sure, it doesn't hurt to have someone from or near a key battleground state like many in the Midwest, for example. But I think it doesn't hurt to make inroads into some key demographics, non-traditional Republican voters. That's obviously why someone like Senator Tim Scott, who's very competent in his own right. But in the end, it's really about doing no harm. So I think it was probably considered a distant pick before, but I wouldn't be surprised, for example, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum's a competent guy, made a lot of money, sold his company to Microsoft, is a business leader, but isn't going to overshadow the top of the ticket. That's a kind of pick that might seem odd to many, but again, it puts all the focus on Donald Trump and it reinforces a sense of competency.
Yeah, you make a great point in terms of not overshadowing. If you were to look at that whole list and think about the guy who is most like Mike Pence, it would be Doug Burgum, unquestionably. Good to see you, Governor. Thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, doctors in Colorado now say they think 70 people might have the bird flu that came from cows. Could be more. Testing is still a mess, and who knows how many cows have it. Almost sounds like COVID, right, all over again. Will America ever trust the scientists again? Nobody really trusts science anymore, and science, for some odd reason, does not seem to care. That is a profoundly scary situation when doctors in Colorado think they found 70 people possibly infected with the bird flu. A Northeastern professor outlined the problem like this: we're playing with fire. We're really not doing the surveillance to say that it's not here. We've almost certainly missed human cases. The real question we need to answer is, are there thousands of flu cases we missed or just a handful? It's an important question. Right now, 9 states have dairy cows with bird flu. Evidently, it is possible for bird flu to jump from cows to dairy workers. And there's about 100,000 dairy workers in the country. But don't worry, says the scientist. It can't jump from the dairy worker to another human. And we've heard that before, right? We've seen this play. Kind of like when we didn't have to worry because COVID wasn't airborne from human to human. Those were scientists that told us that. Same scientists who told us not to wear masks than to wear masks. Same scientists who told us ivermectin would kill us. Now, evidently, it may work. The very same scientists and politicians who told us that you can't get COVID if you get the vaccine. We all know how that worked out. Then you needed to wear masks with the vaccine. We literally have no idea what went wrong during COVID. We can't even agree on where it came from. And nobody seems to want to learn what killed 1.2 million Americans and cost us $16 trillion. We had commissions for 9/11. We had the Kennedy assassination commissions, the Warren report. We had a primetime congressional hearings for January 6th. We looked into Pearl Harbor. But nothing for COVID. Nobody to answer the essential questions about COVID. So here we go again. Cows now have bird flu and are infecting dairy workers, and nobody trusts the scientists who could protect us, the scientists we count on to protect us. The CDC director said, quote, "We are ready to deploy. We have been for weeks." We need the CDC. We need the NIH. We need to be able to trust them. The worst part of COVID still lies ahead of us. Maybe it's bird flu. Maybe it's something else. But sometime we are going to need to trust America's smartest scientists. Even scientists don't seem to be interested in admitting or figuring out how they got things wrong. That's what scientists are supposed to do. If only they would be honest enough to tell us what went right and what went wrong, we could trust them again. And we need to. Tune in tonight for a special edition of Dan Abrams Live. NewsNation is live with border authorities as they patrol in real time. Plus conversations with police departments across the country, examining the border crisis that is in your hometown too. That's 9 Eastern. Chris is next.